Okay. Call to order the Upshur County Board of Education special meeting. Roll call. Jan on phone. Roy absent. All others are present. Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, number 4, approval of the agenda adjustment and/or agenda addendum. Superintendent respectfully requests approval of the agenda as presented. Recommendation, motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. It carries. Number 5, finance. General discussion of topics related to board member understanding of areas within the budget of Upshur County Schools.
And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Sarah, my darling.
This is a twist for me and you.
Yeah. Usually you were teaching me.
Second
First
row,
off,
third seat.
First off, I'm going to give you a copy of kind of like an engagement letter for the audit that we're supposed to provide you. That will start, I think Monday they're tentatively going to start the audit.
Here, take this one.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then Jan and Roy's, I can email that to them so they'll have a copy. And then I'm also going to pass out.
Don't pass out.
A couple of,
Who's to this?
yeah, I don't know.
You got it?
Yep. You all want some down
I'll
there?
make one, yes.
So this is just a general audit that they do to every school board?
Yes. Yeah,
that correct?
every year, every school
Every
board
year.
has to have an audit done.
Okay, so this is ours
Yes.
time.
Yeah. So we're
Can
just.
she send another one down so he
You
can
need
at
another
least
one?
look?
I sure can.
That way you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, because normally, like, you could either have the like state auditor's office do your audit, or you can pick like an independent audit firm. Just because of our situation, we're having the state auditor's office do ours.
Okay.
They did it last year, so they're going to go ahead and do it again this year.
Yes, please.
And there's never there's not a conflict with that, with the federal investigation? I mean, not a conflict, but I mean,
No.
they just do strictly auditing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, they're just coming in and looking at the books pretty much to make sure that we're doing it correctly.
Now, the audit, does the auditor's office, do they determine which entities they do compared to letting the entity, because my previous experience, they determined whether they did
Yeah.
that entity or not.
Right. I believe so. I know, like, we have to, like, before, I think May of each year, have to decide who we're going to have as our auditor, if we want it to be the state auditor's office or if we've chosen to go with another firm. And if we do that, then of course we have to do like the RFP and put it out for bid, and then we have to send that to the state, and I believe they have to approve it and say, yes, they can be your auditor for this year. Or maybe they'll be like, nope, well, we're going to do it this year. So I do have a copy. This is like last year's audit. So this was like the financials. That's how big it was for last year. So there, a lot of work does go into it. This is just the start of my audit binder. So this is kind of how I start my financials, like all the documentation that kind of backs up the financials in the end. And I did, Mr. Parker, I did print you out a copy. So that has the statements, all the notes, the MDA, all that stuff. And if the other board members, I'm going to go ahead and make like a PDF of that, and I'll go ahead and send that out as well. So then all board members will have a copy. Because for this presentation, I wasn't really sure exactly how in depth we wanted to go or what all. So I figured I'd pull up like my template, because the state department sends like a financial statement template that pretty much every county kind of uses. and we kind of plug all of our information in there. There's a bunch of formulas where everything kind of goes. And there's like checks and balances to make sure you have everything and everything's totaling at the end. So I thought we could kind of go over that a little bit. And then I have like also a copy of, they call it the MDA, which it's the management discussion and analysis. So it's basically taking the financial statements and kind of putting it into words and kind of explaining it a little bit more. And then the notes, of course, go into like more in-depth detail of your financial statements as well. And all of these, like the state does provide like templates for us. So it makes sure it's like in accordance with GAAP and all the proper terminology and stuff is in there that you need. And then of course we just kind of plug our information in there from the financials. But the handout that I gave you, I kind of want to do like a broad overview. Like this is, so the first front and back page is like a little excerpt out of the chart of accounts that we use, and this determines basically how all of our expenses and revenues and everything is coded, and then that kind of flows into the financial statements. So the whole big chart of accounts is this, like this is my copy that I keep. So it's like 100 pages of all the different funds, like projects, program functions, that kind of stuff that anything could be coded to. But I kind of gave you just a little blurb. So there's like 8 parts of a whole big account code. So there's the first part is your fund, which that determines like whether it's your general fund or if it's a special revenue, like Fund 61, if it's your ESSER money, which is Fund 71. Then the next part, there's 5 digits, which that is like your project. So usually anything in like Fund 61, like your special revenue projects will have a project. So then you can say, okay, this is special revenue, and then dependent on the project, then you could say, okay, this is title money, or this is like a state grant. So there's a whole bunch of different dimensions within those 5 digits as well. Next section could either be, if it's a revenue, it would tell you what kind of revenue it is. If it's an expense, it'll tell you like your program function. And then if it's a balance sheet account, then that part of that code kind of depicts what kind of balance sheet account it is. Then the 4th set is 3 digits, and that's your object, which that usually depends on like the type of account. So if it's an expense, then it'll break it down. If it's like instructional, then it's like your general supplies. So it kind of breaks it out even more in detail of what type of expense it is. Then the number 5 set of numbers is the location. So that way we can track like how much we're spending per school, or per location that we have. Like the central office has a location, maintenance, transportation. So that kind of helps us break it down even more. Cost centers, we've really just been using that the majority in like our SRF money, because we had to break it down into certain buckets for them. Title 4, I believe, is now using it as well to kind of break down that in the different sections that we have to have for that. We also kind of have used it in the past to like help denote like some maintenance costs, or like when we had some of the levy expenses, like different locations and stuff as well. And then the 7th and 8th part of the account code we don't really use, but they've left it there in case that the department wants to expand and add more numbers for us. So that's kind of just a basic like overview of the account code structure. The next page, like the back of that, is the program function for the expense side of it. So this kind of helps it flow a little bit more into the financials. So like when we break down our expenses by instruction, or like the support services, and then all the different steps under that, it kind of helps. It can kind of help you tell which one it is. So if you're the program function, which I put a copy of like a purchase order on the next page as a kind of a reference to show, like there's an account code at the bottom. So this one is gonna be for like Title I for this year. So if you look at like this, the third part of that code, so it's like 6-1, which that tells you it's like a special revenue fund. The next part of that, the 41510.
Wait a minute, the 6-1
Is your fund. So that's like, that'll tell, the 6-1 is a special revenue fund. And then that's how it's also kind of broken down in your financials by the different funds. So you have your Fund 11, your Fund 61. And then the next part of that is going to be your project, which I know that the 4-1 means title. The the third digit usually in your project is what fiscal year you're in. So that would be fiscal year 25 money that we're using.
darn.
So if we were doing something and it was 24 money we were trying to spend, then that would be a 4 in that project code. Then like the next set of those numbers, the 5-1s, that is the program function. So if it starts with a 1, if you kind of look back at the previous page, then we can tell that is for regular elementary ed. And the second digit is a 1, so that's instruction. And then, so it kind of breaks it down. And then the next digit's another 1, so that's instruction for regular ed students. So there's a whole bunch of different arrays that you can come up with, but that kind of flows into, that part is what they really look at in the your financials.
And so before I sign off on a purchase order, I look at these numbers to make sure that it's representative of where that funding is supposed to be charged back to or come from.
So basically, in the past, the last couple administrations, as far as why we're in this, they didn't do this? Is that, or they did it sketchily, or they didn't do it at all? Or, I mean, are these codes, they have these codes for everything from the last?
Forever.
Yeah.
Ever
and
since
every,
I've been
Okay.
a principal, even these codes have been
Yeah.
around.
yeah, and every like county uses the same codes.
So,
Like,
yeah, just
so then that
wondering
way when
if
they
some
go
of
to the state
monies
does,
that were misappropriated didn't have the proper, or did, or whatever.
It could have, but someone may not have been paying attention and just rubber stamped things.
Right.
You know, and that's one of the things that, you know, the auditor's office pointed out. You can't use a
can't do-
stamp to approve. So, you know, well, it while it takes longer, because sometimes some of these codes, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember that one. I just get the book out.
I was
And I
gonna
just look
say,
it
so
up.
you just have a book and you can tell what each.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So
I
this-
do.
yeah, this whole chart of accounts.
And that's, okay.
Yeah, so it'll break it down. Yeah,
And it's for every area
But
too.
it's for
So like
every
when I
area,
did
there's like-
transportation and maintenance,
yeah, so
I had
there's
sets of numbers I had to
instruction,
know.
there's,
And just like her, if I didn't know, then I had to go look it
You had to
up.
go
Yeah.
look, okay.
Yeah, and you gotta make sure, you can't just
yeah.
okay it.
And they do have a copy of like the whole chart of accounts on the Department of Ed website.
Right.
So that, because it changes every year, of course, they add new codes or take codes away or,
Right.
And can you have local codes?
That's a good question. Like, that are just for your county, you mean? That maybe someone other county wouldn't have.
I know like sometimes if we get like a grant or something that it's just ours, then there's a second, like a project code that starts with a 9. And then we can kind of make those up if it's not like tied to a specific funding source that they already have, like mentioned in here.
Okay.
Cause we get some like from Weyerhaeuser and
Yes.
grants like that we get here, but the
Well,
schools
that's what
spend.
yeah.
So we can help us track that as well, but we kind of create our own projects for that. But they usually all start with a 9 to kind of separate that from all the other ones they have listed.
So then I guess the 611, then that's,
Yeah, so that's your object, and then the 611 means general supplies. And all of those, like I said, of course, are in that chart of accounts. So all of if it's a 100 through a 299, it's payroll related, and anything 300 and after are like your other expenses. And they're kind of broken out into little sections as well. And then that next part, the 008 is the location, which that tells me that that is title or title funding. Because we do have a list of that, like 001 is county, like the county office. And then each school has, of course, their
A
own
number,
location.
okay.
Yeah. And usually the elementary schools are like 200 range. Middle school is 301, high school's 501.
Right, yeah, I knew
For
that, yeah.
Beverly would be
Right,
701.
yeah, when we used to do.
What
okay.
is 008? What funding?
Title.
Title.
And then I also gave you a copy for that as well to show like our requisition process. So now we use a system called Droplet. So everybody is supposed to go in there, put the requisition in first. Then, like for this one, so Sabrina Loudon was the one who requested this purchase. Then she picked title funding. Then since she picked that, then more kind of questions comes up because title funding, there's like the federal guidelines and more strict stuff that we have to follow. So we're kind of setting that up. So whenever we do have the audits and we're making sure that, okay, why are we purchasing this? Does this fit within the guidelines of title funding? So now when they pick that, they do Title I, then they get that question that pops up. Like, what is the funding focus? So they have to pick whether it deals with instruction, if it's a parent involvement activity, if it's professional development. And then dependent on that, then they get a whole bunch of other questions that pop up. So like if they pick parent engagement or involvement, then more questions pop up because the state's kind of looking at that a little bit more. So we're trying to be proactive and making sure, you know, that we have everything in order to make sure that is a correct purchase for that funding source.
Very good.
And then that kind of flows through. So once they pick title, they fill out all their stuff, they can attach quotes, and anything they need, they'll submit that. Then we have that routed to go to Jody then, since she's over title. Then she'll look at it, then she can say, okay, yes, based on your documentation, that is a, you know, legit expense for that funding, so she can approve it. Then it usually comes to me. I kind of look over it. Then I send it back to her for her final approval. Then it goes to Alex for him to create the purchase order. Once that's printed out, I look over them again. Then Christy looks over them and she physically signs them. Then we give them back to accounts payable, and then they usually scan that in, attach it back to the droplet form, so everything's kind of there. And then they'll send like an email to the person that says, okay, your request for this has now been properly approved. Here's your PO number. Go ahead and place that order. So that's kind of the whole new process of how we've been doing it for this past year and this year as well, to make sure we're following those proper procurement processes. And then if we see anything on our end that's like, oh, you didn't do this, or you didn't upload documentation that we need, we can send that back to the person and say, hey, we still need this form, or this doesn't look right, you know, then we can kind of send it back and forth.
And so when the POs come to me, and I start, and I look through the account codes, but I also look at the things that are being ordered, if I don't understand why a person is requesting certain things, or if I'm not quite believing that perhaps that's a purchase that's gone through things that need to go through, Alex and I just started putting sticky notes, and I don't sign the POs. So after I've signed them, with all of those that I put those sticky notes on, then I go back to Alex and I say, here are my questions. And then because we're using this system, he can then pull it up, and then we can go through, and I make sure that with him that is what the intent is of what it is that we're procuring. That step was not in there before.
Well, that's, yeah.
That step was not in there before.
And this is mainly for purchase orders? Or is this for all spending when you do these accounts?
All spending.
All spending.
All
This
spending.
is all spending.
All spending, okay.
Yeah, because before we can purchase anything, we have to have that requisition and the PO prior to purchasing any items.
And this takes some time.
Yes.
It does, and I will tell you what else is happening. Because we are following the rules, we've been having some issues with some of our vendors, even vendors who've been longtime vendors. And they are also vendors with other counties throughout the state. We are questioned quite a lot. Well, I don't provide this for the other counties. Why are you asking me for this? Or, well, I have this already set up with the state. Can't you just use their things? The answer is no. No. And more times than not, it has delayed the process of us being able to then release the purchase order and or release payment. It has really bogged us down. But here's the thing, we are doing things the right way.
Yes.
And when vendors boo-hoo and, kind of push back, we are under state takeover. We are correcting what was not correct in the past. We
Yes.
cannot move forward until we are following the proper procedures.
Absolutely.
Usually that gets them going. Now, there have been several that I've had to send forms to the state and ask Kelly Talbot to review changes that people want to put on some of the forms. Because the folks in Charleston created the forms. They are legal documents. You can't just go and strike through legal documents. So many of our vendors have attempted to do that. So we have to go into negotiations as to why things can't be or what can be accepted and what cannot. So that can be another hiccup in this process. So it has slowed things down.
It's mainly a time
Yes.
hiccup, not necessarily you don't get what you need.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. It just it takes time, and they're not always willing to produce, but we just keep after it.
Well, they're so used to it being stamped, rubber
Yes.
stamped, and doing what they want to do. But now that we are now following rules and regulations and code, it's not as expedient as they want it to be.
Right.
So once they get to the point to know that we're serious about this, we want our county back up and running the way it should have been run for years. We're serious about this. And once they get to that point, and they will, within a year or so, they will, then things, I believe, will run smoother.
We say no a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we just,
Well,
we do.
you
No,
don't-
we're not doing that.
You don't have a choice.
Right.
I mean, we really, if it's not following code, our answer should be no.
Yep.
Well, and the expectation is on both ends, not just the vendors, but the people that are requesting. They're used to, I want this, and they expect it
now.
tomorrow.
Right.
And we're like, this is gonna be 2-3 weeks, a
Right.
month before this goes
Yes.
through process. And they don't understand that, so that created some of the frustration
Right.
as well, on the other end.
On the other end.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, if you want something tomorrow, you better put in that
Right.
request at least 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time.
Exactly, and that's settling now,
Yes.
they're understanding
Yeah,
that now.
they'll get
Yeah.
there.
Now, we have emergencies that occur, just like any
Absolutely.
organization does,
Absolutely.
and we
Right.
have a process in place to address those emergencies.
Yes.
So, it was a lot about the processes were in place
Right, right.
or were not followed.
Okay.
And then another wrinkle they added this year was, like all of our vendors, we have to make sure now they're registered with the Secretary of State and the Tax Department before we can even have them as a vendor. So we went through, Alex did at the end of last year, and we deactivated all of our vendors. So none of them were active. So now, as we're getting all the proper stuff we should have, then we activate them and say, okay, we have all of our stuff for that vendor. They are an approved vendor now, we can use those. So that's taking a really long time, because now we have to contact, because usually it was just a W-9, okay, we got your W-9, you can be our vendor. Well, now, we're supposed to get, that's slowing our process down a lot this year.
Yep.
So,
But we're doing what we should have been doing years ago.
yeah,
to make
and I think
sure that
that
they are.
requirement had been in place, but
Yes.
nobody had really been following it. And then I think when the state got audited for something, then that kind of came to light, and they're like, oh, well, we haven't been doing this, so now all of the counties are supposed to be doing
Okay.
and making sure that they're registered with both the
Yes.
Secretary of State and the Tax Department, which the Secretary of State, we can kind of look that up, there's a database,
Right.
but the Tax Department, we can't. It has to come from the vendor that says, yep, I'm registered, and here's my proof.
Yeah.
So that's kind of slowing the process a
Yes.
little bit more this year as well.
So on this account number that we have right here, so location was 008, and then you said you don't use generally the last two, but then the cost that says 000, you just didn't put the cost in, or is that just a code that,
Yeah, that one's only used on like certain projects.
the cost one you mean?
Yeah, yeah. So most of the time it's gonna be zeros.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand.
Yeah, but like I know, Title IV monies, we have to for that. There's like, I think 3 different cost centers now. And the main one they were using it for was our, ESSER money. Cause they had that broken down, cause there was like 3 different pots that we had to spend so much on, like summer schools and stuff like that. So they had different cost centers to help us track that. So then when it came time to, for reporting purposes, then we kind of already had all that broken out, and we didn't have to go back through and go, okay, was this for this? So it kind of helps
Yeah.
a little bit more with the reporting part of it, but it's only certain projects that you use that one.
Okay.
And then the next thing I have in there for you is just some substitute costs, for fiscal year 24. Just kind of broken out by, professional and service, of course, and then there's different codes if it's just like a day-to-day sub, or if it's like a long-term sub that's filling a vacant position. So I just kind of gave you that as a reference, like the year-to-date expenses was actually how much, like gross, salary was charged, and then of course you have like your social security and some workers' comp
Right.
that would also be charged to that. So just to kind of give you we might have spent 1.6, but really we spent 1.8 once you start adding in all the extra
Right.
I
costs
just
for
can't get
that.
over that professional day-to-day versus that professional long-term. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
And some of that, like they did add new codes because at one point it was just professional sub. Well, then they started breaking it out by day-to-day or long-term. And I know we're still trying to make sure that we're getting them in the right categories. So some of that might be a little bit, should have been a long-term, but they were coded to day-to-day for last year.
How long do you have to be in to be long-term versus day-to-day?
It's a certification piece too, because day-to-day can only go up to 10 days, but a long-term can serve longer than 10 days
Right.
in the same position. So if we have advertised a position 3 times and we've had no certified applicants, then we can make that long-term. If the person that wants to fill in for that long-term position is not certified in that area, then we request a waiver from the State Department. And what they do is they go back in and they look at their applications for certification, and they determine whether they will approve that long-term permit for them to be able to go into that
Okay,
classroom.
so what's the minimum number of days that are required to deem it long-term? Is it 10, is it 20, is it a month, or,
It's the number of postings.
It's the number of postings.
oh, it's only based on, okay.
Right.
It is the
After we
number of
post it
postings.
3 times, we can't get anybody, then we can modify it.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
And I had Kelsey the other day because, personnel season is here. I mean, it's here,
Yep.
it's here all the time,
Yes.
as Mr.
Yep.
Collette will tell you. And I had her print me out an org chart, and then she applied colors to this so that I know what are true vacancies that still exist,
Right.
who is in a day-to-day position, and who is in a long-term position. So I'm presently going through that. But I also asked the high school principal to give me a copy of her schedule and the number of students that are in each period. Because, when you get to middle school and high school, certification becomes an issue, but you also have to look at what are the number of students that they're serving and in what areas are they, and are they certified then to teach in each of those areas? And then what impact does it have if you try to take this group of kids and you put them over here, and can we pull somebody from there to put them over here because they're certified there? It's a puzzle, but that puzzle has to start now.
Right.
Because if you're thinking about, cost savings, where can we start that? Now, when you look at this substitute piece, I'm going to just say it this way. Back in the day, for those of us who are older, we have a payment at the end when we opt to retire. We can either use it for additional years of service or paid up insurance. Anyone that was hired after July 1 of 2015 does not have that option. So it really is not a benefit to our personnel, and they understand that, so they use their days.
Yes.
They use those days. If I've got those days coming to me and you're not gonna give me anything out here on the end, then I'm going to use them. So over time, of course, these costs have increased because of that.
Yes, that's
Because
true.
they don't get anything on the end, when they retire.
Yeah, I wonder why they did that, because it cost effectively, doesn't make sense.
It's cost effective for the state.
For the state,
To do
but-
it that's why they're.
Yes,
Well,
that's
yeah,
why they
but-
did it. It's cost effective for them. Several
Then it
groups
puts the
have
cost
gone back
on
to
the
them.
counties instead of.
Yeah,
Right.
several folks have gone to the legislature, particularly in the last 5 years, to ask to have some of that at least restored, but it's never gained any traction, to be able to do that, you know, so, and that's really important to understand
But it's
about
such a
how.
burden it places on the counties.
Yes, it
though.
does.
It does, and
Yes,
it's
it does.
also an additional reason why it's very difficult to get new teachers. People are not going into the field like they did when we were in school.
No,
Right.
And so it's very,
no
the number of
benefits.
applicants has just dwindled, people that are certified. I can remember talking to colleges and, they'd have 30, 40 different graduating classes, students per college. Now it's 2, 3
Yeah.
teachers per year. It's not very
I was
many.
gonna say, cause this county snagged up hundreds from
Right.
Wesleyan,
not anymore.
from 72, 74 to like 80 something. I
Yep.
mean, literally hundreds.
We talked with Wesleyan before the year started, and they projected 2
Are you serious?
Yes.
for this year, yes, ma'am. Now, that may have changed since we've talked to them again, but it's not gonna change much. She has students, but ones that are graduating prepared, and we were going in with the new teacher programs they have that allow them to student teach and start working at the same time.
CTRs,
And
yeah.
she had nobody for a fall semester. She might have 2 in the spring. Both of them are not from here and don't anticipate staying here.
We're going to be interviewing those students. There's actually 3 now. She got 3.
Is there a third one?
It is interested, because they don't have to do it that way.
Right.
They can, that's an option that they have, so.
Right.
We'll be interviewing 3 in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Good luck.
On the unemployment, are we reimbursable or do we pay a percentage on everybody's wages?
Like for the workers'
Unemployment,
comp or the unemployment?
no, it's not workers' comp, it's unemployment, you have 2 selections that you can do. You can, if someone files for unemployment, you can pay a reimbursable, or you can pay a percentage on everybody. I think it's the first 8,000, 10,000 or whatever, on everybody's salary, and pay that into the fund.
I'm not sure on that, but I can look into it for you. Because I know Chris usually kind of helps me with the unemployment and like submitting the stuff that we need to, so I can double check with him and see how we're doing that.
I mean, I don't know how many claims we have for unemployment.
Not very many, I don't think.
I wouldn't
That's what I was
think,
gonna ask.
No, I think COVID, of course, there was a big uptick, but I think after that, I don't think I haven't seen any come through in a while.
when I was with the county commission here, we were reimbursable because that was more cost effective. I don't know if you can change, if we're paying a percentage on everybody's salary, I don't know when or if you can change after you've made that selection.
I'll definitely look into that.
Is this County Board of Education finance audited every single year?
Yes,
All public entities must be
yes.
audited every year.
And they usually start about now, and then the reports have to be in by like, end of March. So I think they were trying to wait for March 15th to have ours done.
And that's a question I had for the last couple of years. How? If we were being audited every year,
That's my
how
question right now.
did
that I'm
we
writing.
get in this situation?
The auditor, or the audit firm wasn't doing their job.
No, you think?
That's an easy answer.
Yes.
I don't know if the state's looking at suing them or not,
Well,
but they should
Who
be.
did the auditing
They
back
should.
then, back in the last 5 years or whatever?
David Howe,
From,
CPA firm from, I think, Cabin Creek, or somewhere down in Charleston area.
They have to be approved, is that
But yeah,
correct?
there's a list of like approved audit firms that we can pick from. And like I said, well, you have to send out like a RFP to like local firms and say, okay, here's, who wants to bid on our audit. And then they would send back their proposals, and then we would go through that whole process.
And the state approved these?
Yes, and then we have
They were
to
on
send
the
that
list.
to the,
Are they still on the list?
I don't know, because
I
we
don't
just,
know, I
we're
haven't-
we're
yeah.
focused on the auditor's office coming with us.
I was gonna say,
I would think not. Yeah. No, I'm not sorry.
No, don't be sorry about
I
it.
would think not.
yeah. And who,
Look
I
at the
think
mess.
there was another one, Glasser,
Yeah,
I think,
Something
did it
like that.
before that.
If you get an audit with 0 findings, they have not done their job.
if
My
you get them,
opinion.
say that again?
If you get an audit that has 0 findings,
Oh, yeah.
even if they don't write an official finding in the exit interview, if they don't give you a heads up, so to speak, I'm not gonna write this as a finding, but you have this problem.
yes, yes, yes.
yeah, there's always something.
Yeah, there is always something.
Yeah, but the frustration for me is that for those 4 years before I got on this board, and we have been coming to this board telling them all of this, and nothing was still done. So that's my frustration. I mean, we were coming every single board meeting, giving information to this board.
Well,
And nothing still was done, nothing was investigated, nothing was looked into. So for me, it's like, yeah, ignorance is bliss, everybody was real happy, but I mean, we came in with all of the trips, all of the monies, all of the federal, everything. And still nothing was done. And so that's my frustration. Nobody listened to us. And it all came to fruition, obviously. And a lot of it could have been handled had they listened. And so, and even with all of that going on, why was that company even allowed to keep continuing? And why wasn't the board held accountable also for not listening when all of these things were going on, and then all of a sudden everyone comes in, takes over? Yeah, we've been telling you that for a long time.
well,
And so I guess that's my frustration.
my opinion, Willie's opinion, the state should be looking at action against the audit firm or firms that did the audits. And the state should be looking at the bonds for individuals that were in the positions of authority at that time and going against the bonds of those individuals. And there's time periods to do all that.
I came
And
in.
we can't do that as a local board right now
No.
because the state has
Well,
control.
that's just it.
Otherwise, we should be filing, the local board should be filing, but we do not have that authority at this point.
I came in on the tail end of this when it was all starting to, and yes, I did listen, Susan. And I started asking questions, Jan started asking questions, we started pushing, asking questions, what, and then I know personally, I was told that I needed to trust the administration
No.
that was hired. Well, that sent red flags. I mean, my whole brain was nothing but a red flag. But with my inexperience and without proper training yet, and so we have asked for more training for boards of education to know what in the world we are supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. Because we really I didn't feel that we were properly trained enough. Of course, I was just coming in. But, yeah, red flags was going up. Well, what is this? And what is that? And what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And why are we paying this amount of money for this? But whenever you have an audit, and, you know, just my experience whenever I come in and sit in on board meetings, whenever you have a state auditor coming in who knows more, I'm not a finance person, who knows more about finances, and the state has approved the state audit, and the state audit says, oh, everything is just great, everything, you're on the right track, everything is just hunky-dory. So here you have this state audit that has done your audit, and no offense, but then you have laymen coming in and saying, whoa, 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 and then you have these professionals saying, oh no, everything is fine, everything is good, and it's sour grapes and everything. So where are you? And then you're asking questions, and you're getting shut, and not knowledgeable.
Which is why
enough.
we never stopped.
Yeah, and that's good.
Because we knew.
That's good. But then you had new board members there that are not yet knowledgeable enough to start pushing hard. We got there real quick, but not
Well,
yet.
For me, that's one reason I've asked the superintendent, and they've been very forthcoming with the information, is to look at every invoice.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as you know, I usually have some questions. You know, it may be related to invoice. You know, last time it was names that shouldn't have been in the public record on a couple invoices or others. But you can find a lot of information. You may not know the details of the coding, but XYZ company, what is this for?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we asked those questions. What is this for? Why? What is this? And
But unless
that-
you see the actual
Right.
invoice, it's hard
Right.
to tell at
Right.
times.
Well, it was like roadblocks were put up. And when your superintendent comes in and says, oh, no, everything is fine, and blah, 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 blah. And when your superintendent recommends things, but even I ask questions on the hiring of certain individuals. Well, I wasn't allowed to do that. That's called micromanaging. And I'm going, no. What certification did this individual have?
I didn't.
That over,
Yeah.
yeah, but see, you trust that person that you hired to do that job. I didn't hire, but to do that job, to give you correct information. And there you are.
So, question, Sarah. So, like, when you see an account like this for everything, like federal grants, state grants, any grants, or federal monies or whatever, they're all coded also.
Everything.
Yeah,
Everything
Everything
should be.
has to be.
Everything
Okay, so
should be.
my question is, if that's the case, and I guess it goes back to either the auditors or the board at that time, can you, if something's been approved, let's say, it can be any federal grant, okay, I'll just do the Italy grant, okay, I just call it the Italy grant, what's it called, what's the program in
Reggio.
that, thank you, let's
I
just
had to
take
think.
that, okay, because that's one that we came to the board about, okay, when the auditors come in, do they look at, you got this grant money, and this is what that money was intended for. It's intended to start this program, it's intended to do this, it's intended to that. And then they come in and look, do they look to see if those monies were properly used? Was the actual program implemented? Do they look at all that, or do they just look at the money, just the numbers? Because that,
Right. I know last year they definitely looked like, I think they have to pick, especially like some of the federal grants, like they have to pick one every year or so often to, okay, we're gonna do a deep dive into this one this year.
Okay.
And look at it to make sure, like you're following all the like procurement processes and all the federal guidelines and everything in there matches with, you know, what that federal money was supposed to be spent for.
right,
I know in times past when I've helped with like audits, they didn't dive as deep. They just kind of looked at the financials to make sure you were presenting back.
Yeah, but
And
what
I
if you
think they
never even,
picked,
what if you received all of these millions of dollars and never even implemented it, but you just went on a 2-week vacation to Italy?
Yeah.
Because basically, I mean, is that what happened? So what I'm asking you is, I guess that's part of the federal investigation, right? But how do they know if things were properly implemented?
So I think it goes back to when grant funding is released. So Sarah and I get notices that we have grants in the grant, I'm gonna say grant folder, because that's the easiest thing for me to say. But when we get funds from the state, it goes into this grant folder. And we have to go in, and she has to go in and approve it, and I have to go in and approve it. And in that paperwork that comes, the PDF that we can open up, it specifically states what it can be spent on. It tells us the date for disbursement, that it has to be utilized.
Right.
It gives us,
But what if that has never been done, is my question.
then,
That's under investigation.
That's the investigation.
yeah, if
Okay.
it wasn't looked at and if it wasn't spent properly according to what we get, then that should be a red flag. It's important to note, because I'm gonna take you back to my Taylor County experience as superintendent. So we had a firm that came in from Huntington that did our audit each year. They would send to us at least a month, 6 weeks prior to them coming, which of the areas they were going to do their deep dive in. That could be federal programs, special education, child nutrition. They always looked at personnel. I don't care. Every year they looked at personnel, every single year. And where they would come in and just, you wouldn't have to pull anything except the certified list, so they could have that as they were pulling files to make sure that things were up to speed, up to snuff of what they were looking, at, that should be contained in those files. And they would ask for purchase orders, invoices, everything to be pulled, so that when they came on the table where they were going to be working,
So
were these
everything's right
things that
there.
were ready to go. But in addition to that, what they would do is they would actually sit down and have a conversation with the person that was in charge of that particular area. And that person would have to be able to answer questions that they may have about each of those things. If it came down to a mistaken coding, which can happen, to make sure that it's charged back to the correct account, you have to be able to explain that. Sometimes we can catch them when we can revise a PO, so we make sure it's coming out of the correct account, and we can catch it on the front end. Sometimes it's not caught until somebody else is looking into it, and it's like, wait a minute, this says that this was coming from this fund, but when I look, that's not where it came from. What did you do? How did you correct this? I know in federal program land, when you're talking particularly about Title I and you're paying stipends, or you're paying in Title II for professional development, there has to be a pretty stringent paper trail back to including who came to the professional development. You gotta have a sign-in sheet, an agenda if one was provided. What are the learning outcomes and learning objectives? If you're sending someone to professional development, when we go into the current system that we're using now, it requires us to upload an agenda so that you can see, okay, what is this person going for? And then when I see them, before I approve them, I go back and I look, okay, so is this related to a goal in our strategic plan? Is it related to our West Virginia SIP plan? And that plan is all about supporting instructional personnel. Does it relate back to mentoring of our principals, of our teachers, or whomever? It takes time. It takes time. But then when the auditors come in, you're ready for your answers, because number one, you've got it all there for them. And then if they have any other questions, you're prepared to answer them, because you know what you did and how it relates. And they will ask those questions. As the superintendent, I was pulled in and they would ask me questions. Okay, so you set this up. What was the process you used from the beginning? And I would have to be able to tell them how we came to be. and why we spent those funds on that particular thing. I had to know that too.
Yeah, and I'm not going back just to have a complaint session.
No.
I
You're
wanna know,
understanding.
I wanna understand, and I wanna know, you know, when we came to the board with all of what we thought were irresponsible or illegal spending, especially with implementation of these grants. You know, on and on and on, we came, and nothing. I don't want that to happen again.
Correct.
Is my thing.
Mhm.
And, you know, even when we, it got to the point where we came and said it so many times that nobody listened, that we finally did the FOIA. That's when we did the FOIA, and we FOIA'd all those trips. And then we did the forensic audit request, because we knew that things weren't, we knew. And, of course, that's when kind of everything happened.
Correct.
But, you know, as far as a board and this central office, if you have millions coming in for a grant, this is my thing, okay? This is just Susan's opinion. If you have a grant and you're spending millions of dollars, you've received millions of dollars for a grant, okay? You go to Italy for 2 weeks and you do your thing, yeah, fine. And then you come back, well, everybody in this office knows, and the board, was that grant implemented? I mean, it's not rocket science, and you don't have to have 75 hours of training to know whether the money that you received, was it implemented?
It's a simple question.
It's a very
It should have a very simple answer.
And it was never answered until we finally had to,
Yes.
you know, do what we had to do, which,
Yes.
you know, and so that's what I don't want to see is, if grants are written and they're federal monies coming in, and you've received those and you've benefited from that money, but you haven't implemented anything for that program as to why you got that money, that's a major infraction.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't want to ever see that happen to this county again.
Right. And
I mean,
think
I personally would never allow that.
so. And I think that
If someone came to me.
by using the West Virginia Auditor's Office, and while we got a total of what, 23 last year findings, Sarah and I looked at each other and we said, well, thank God, because now we know.
Well, that's, yeah.
Now we know, and then we can go about corrective action. And David was very good last year from the auditor's office, because he said, we're gonna have findings. And he said, and some of these are not gonna be correctable in 1 year. He said, but the key is that you're working towards that
it,
correction.
right, yes.
You know, so it really was a godsend for the two of us. And I want to repeat this. A superintendent has a fiduciary responsibility.
Yes.
And so does the Board of Education.
Yes. And
From all of my training, they have a fiduciary duty to.
absolutely.
They do.
And it is my duty to keep you informed
Right.
properly,
Yes.
truthfully,
Yes.
about how funds are being spent.
And see,
That's my job, to inform you
Right.
that's
be
the
able
key.
to answer those questions
Yes.
when they do come up.
Yes.
Because I can tell you, all through the COVID money, every single board meeting in Taylor County, I had 2 board members that were constantly asking us to spend that money in areas we knew we could not. And I had to stand firm, and I had to say, no, ma'am, no, sir. We cannot spend the funding on that. And we would give them the explanation every single time. Here are the areas that we are permitted. Here are some possible ways that it can be spent. That's my responsibility.
But you saying that also puts the boards back against the wall whenever they have to depend on their superintendent
Yes.
to tell them the truth
Yes, ma'am.
and not to sugarcoat anything. And then you have a state auditor also coming in and saying,
From a private firm that
from a
said everything was
private
fine.
firm, everything is fine, and you are not a financial person per se, but it still lays in your lap. And no, I just come in on the tail end, but I can see with the questions that we had asked coming in on this, how a board could be
Snookered.
snookered.
Yes. Yeah.
how they could be snookered, and how, you know, if like you've got a trusted administration you hired to do this job. Well, I didn't hire that administration, and there's something stinks here.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it takes time. It takes push, but
And I think Mr. Parker would agree with this. You gotta have the right people in the right seats to do the
Yes.
job.
Right, you
yes.
do.
And if you don't, then that's where the slippery slope begins.
Exactly where that slippery slope begins, is right there.
I think both of you make a great point, and with my personal experience in my home, I think you know what I'm talking about. We've had the same discussions about possibly the whole system. You know, I don't care what board member you are, when you come in, the expectations, explanations, and the responsibilities are not very clear.
No, they are not.
And it takes a while to go through trainings and
Yes.
to learn and to understand. And at the same time, it's the same thing for the board with a superintendent.
Right.
That relationship has to be built. And it's not a good old boy relationship.
Can't be.
It's a, like you said, it's a fiduciary responsibility relationship. And sometimes there's gonna have to be a no.
Yeah.
And people don't like that, but that's the reality of it. And you have to be able to stand firm and follow the rules. And if you can follow the rules and do it correctly, that's when you don't fall into that scenario you're talking about. And how do you, for lack of a better word, stupid proof that? It's very difficult because you're dealing with different personalities, different emotions, different knowledge levels, different experiences.
Exactly.
And so that's where the superintendent's relationship with the board is a very fine line. It's almost, I relate it to what we tell teachers about children. You know, I'll be a friend to every one of you, but I'm not gonna be your buddy. We're not gonna go out and hang out,
Exactly.
because I'm gonna have to tell you no at some point. And it's not because I'm mad at you, it's because the law says the answer is no. And at the same time, we might be able to turn around and say yes, if the law says yes. But to have the inexperience that I've had in my household, we've had the same exact concerns that both of you brought up. It's very difficult. The system in its own, I think, I don't know how to fix it, but it needs revised.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
It does. The board needs more training, more understanding about what's going on here. And, you know, 6 hours in the fall of the year is not gonna get it. And another 4 hours in the spring, that's not, but with the proper questioning on the state level, they have upped this training a little more. But a layman coming in and sitting on this board, we think we know. We don't know nothing. There's a lot that goes into being on this board, and we need that training to help us. I'll be quiet now.
It's okay. It's okay.
Good questions.
It's a good understanding.
Yep.
It's good understanding that we're building,
That's
because you're
right.
gonna need it.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I guess we're back to this. You are good.
Okay, Sarah.
Are we on this sheet right
Yes.
here?
Yeah, the next one is, it's a schedule of the excess levy. It has like the revenues and the expenditures. That is part of the financial statement template. I figured I'd kind of pull that out for you all, then you could see, like the first kind of section is like the current year expenditures. So it has, that first column is how much estimated we were supposed to get per the levy call. The second column is the actual, like, amounts that we received. So we received, the 3.8 million. And then how that was broken out by each line of the levy call. And then any variances of course, per the levy call, we were supposed to get like 3.2, but we got 3.8, just because of the rates and everything that went up. And then how we kind of spent that. And then the next kind of section is like the year to date. So that would be for the full year or the full term of the levy. That first column, of course, will be per your estimated levy call. All total, we were supposed to get like 16 million. The next column is the actual, so we actually received the 18.4. million, and then how that was broken out into each of the individual categories per the levy. And at the end of the year, we had like the 82,473 that was encumbered that we hadn't spent yet.
Wait a minute, where's that at?
At the very bottom
Over to the right, far
of
right.
like, yeah.
Oh, I got you,
82,000.
okay.
Yeah. So that's how much we had at the end of the year to still be spent in the levy, but it was encumbered. And the majority of that was like instructional supplies that schools had ordered, but we hadn't received them yet, or the invoice to pay those, and then I think some maintenance costs. So that's just kind of a breakdown that is in, will be in the whole financial statements. And then after that is the original, like the levy call that goes with that levy, of course, that lists what the items were to be spent on. I think it even has a copy of the official ballot that was put in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, never know.
So that was just kind of some, I guess, overview of some things to kind of show. Then whenever you look at your financials, that chart of accounts kind of plays a big role as to how those are kind of presented. So like if you look on either screen, like this is our statement of revenues and expenditures for the year end. And see kind of how up at the top it's broken down into each fund. So there's Fund 11, 61, 65 is the school activity fund. So every school has their own bank account and stuff that they do their activity with, which that's done on a separate system through, it's called School Funds Online. And now we have to take all of their activity, do a journal entry, and then put it into Weebus in our books. So that 65 is all the school's activity kind of rolled into one. Then Fund 71 would be the ESSER money, and then Fund 51 would be your like capital projects fund, which that's usually like our SBA money and things like that that we get. So that would be like the first part of our account code would kind of go towards that. And then if you kind of look down the page a little bit when we start getting like into our expenditures, then that's where the third part of your accounting code comes in, where it's like your program function. So then that breaks it down to instruction, how much money you spend on it, and then all your different support services, whether it's for the students, the instructional staff, your admin, your operations, your transportation. Then your food service is broken out on a separate one. So that's kind of why I showed you like the chart of accounts to kind of figure out like how everything kind of flows. So then we take, a bunch of reports that we print out of Weebus and then summarize that to put that into our financials. And then if you look at the very bottom of this, page, will be our fund balance. So basically that's like your, on this line right here, the changes in fund balance. So that will be like your income or deficit, I guess, in that different fund. And then those, of course, keep adding together to make your fund balance. So, of course, if you have a positive change, which means you had more expenses or more revenues than you had expenses, then that just kind of keeps adding to your fund balance. Which, at the end of the year, our fund balance was almost $13 million. Most of that is in our Fund 11 account. And that's kind of a good measure. I think the state wants you to have between 3 and 5% in your fund balance. I believe at the end of this fiscal year, unaudited, we have like 26%.
Wow.
It's the 10 million three, around 10.4, 10,350,000. According to your management discussion analysis, 10,351 and 683, 26%.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, cause that would be based off,
That's unrestricted available
yes.
Yes.
at the end?
Yeah, so that is actually on like the government funds balance sheet, so that comes, from down here, so your unassigned portion, which is
How
like
did,
our fund balance that we can kinda spend on whatever, it's not restricted to one certain thing.
and on the JV entries that we had in our packet the other day, how was that 10,350,000, how did we allocate that to our budget? Or have we allocated all that to our budget?
I don't think we have. I know whenever
I
I
know
did
some
the,
of it has been.
Some,
Yeah,
some
yeah.
has, not
Yeah.
all of it.
not all of it, I don't believe, because, I know whenever I did the budget for this year that we're in, I didn't wanna use a whole bunch of our fund balance, cause I didn't want that to like cushion our,
Sure.
so I think,
Cause if it
It's either
cushions it, it looks like it's more than you really do have.
right,
Okay.
right, yeah, so I don't wanna say, hey, we have, $10 million out there, so let me use that to balance my budget,
No,
like, cause then that's where you
Just
start
get in
getting into trouble.
yes.
Okay.
I think this year I might have had
It's
to
money
use,
you
like,
have, it's
Yes.
money you want to reserve.
Yes.
Yes.
For specific projects.
Yes.
We have, at the end of the fiscal year, $10,351,683. That was unrestricted, unbudgeted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
In my house, we call that the emergency fund.
right, yes,
You
That's a
don't
very
touch.
healthy emergency fund.
yes, cause we knew
But we
that.
Which is fine.
But we need,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
cause we
need a
knew that
healthy emergency
ESSER
fund.
money was gonna be coming to an end, the possibility that the levy might not renew, so we were, tried to watch that and try to, build that up a little bit, cause they kept talking on some of the trainings and stuff that I've been to, like the ESSER cliff, like, you're
We're
gonna
gonna
come to a
fall over.
point and you're, you had all
It's
this
gonna be
money and
gone.
now it's gone, now what are you
Yes.
gonna do?
Yes,
So
So-
we're not restricted to apply for any more federal grants or anything like that because of this investigation, correct? I mean, we
Right.
still can,
Right, yeah, we
Yes.
still got like our title money, our
Yeah,
special
we're
ed
receiving
money,
everything that
our
we're supposed
yeah,
to,
child
and we
nutrition.
can, and still can write new
if necessary.
federal grant, okay.
Yes, anything, any grant opportunity that comes out, we still are able to apply for
So we're not
those.
restricted to
Okay,
do
we are
anything
not.
just because of the, okay.
We are not.
good, good, good.
Okay,
In fact, I did a grant with the State Department, specific to the middle school. We're still waiting to hear from it.
okay.
We wrote it this past summer, and it was specifically to address, at-risk students, beginning in 8th grade. That's where they were gonna start, and it was to funnel down then to 7-6. And it was a 5-year grant, that was going to help with, training our teachers, providing everything that needed to go for that. There were no questions asked about the situation, that we are currently in, so.
Okay, and if you ever need any help writing a grant, I've written several for this county, so,
Yeah.
just saying,
Thank
putting it
you.
out there.
Yeah.
I know on one of the budget transfers, or JV entries, that we had, 2,076,161.44, that came from the fund equity. So that reduced that 10 million downward.
Yeah,
And I'd have to add up, if there's others in there.
yeah,
And then there was, on the JV entries, some carryover from fiscal year, 24, the encumbered funds. This one was just under $99,000. In different accounts, I'm looking at Fund 11, there's 13, 51, 61, I don't know all the different numbers. I know 11 is the general fund.
yes,
That's by far the largest, I know. One of them, in Fund 11 was from fiscal year 22, just over 400,000, 401,018.91. how many fiscal years do we go back? I mean,
Do you know what one that was?
that's
That
the
might have been
oldest I
step
saw on this report. I saw fiscal year 23, 24, and 22.
seven. Do you know which,
Where is that?
one you're looking at?
It's the one that we send to you. We sent to you for this past board meeting.
Oh, that's
Journal-
the same.
budget
okay,
journal
that-
entries.
Okay, so that is,
Step
okay,
seven.
that's
Yes.
the one he's referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so,
step 7 is,
I don't, to my knowledge, I don't think like step 7 has like an end date of like when you have to spend that as of
Now,
now.
that could be changing.
Right.
Based on legislative action
Yes.
we're anticipating.
So we kind of knew, like at the end of the year when I was trying to do financials and stuff as well, like we had some funds where we had spent some of like our step 7 funds, but I knew that those funds could also be spent under the levy call, like by the different items that we had. So into trying to, I guess, pad ourselves just for the future.
Yep.
I moved some of those costs out of the step 7 funds back into the levy because I knew those, like, oh, that fit into levy, that was textbooks, that was, a levy item, so then that kind of freed up a little bit more money left in step 7, so that's why there kind of is a bigger carryover in all those funds
okay.
for this year.
And so each of the carryovers, we have to apply and ask for the extension for those funds. I mean, I know we do in the federal side. So, but do we have to do that on the state side as well? Then we have to ask for permission?
Yeah, if we don't spend all that money
Yes.
in that time frame, then we need to ask for extensions, which I need to go through that, because that's one of the things, when my mentor starts, that was one of my questions that
Yes.
I was kind of gonna ask him, because every year we have to do these sworn statements for our
Yes.
state grants
Yes.
that says, okay, here's the grant award we got, here's how much money we received from it, here's how much we've spent, and we have to kind of attach reports that says, here's what the items that we spent it on. And then we submit that to the state, and then they kind of look over it, and then if you say, okay, well, we have money left over, then, can I get an extension on that, or how that process works?
Yes.
So that process, I'm still working out, how to get the extensions, or if we can, how far back they can go for that kind of things.
Yeah, because on the federal side, we're only permitted to keep a certain percentage of a carryover.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the rule. So it, you
Yeah, titles.
you have to watch that. You have to be
Yeah.
aware of what that percentage is, and then watch your budgeting as you're going through a year to make sure that you're getting to where you need to be.
Yeah.
And then
I
if
know-
you have carryover, well, yeah, hey, make sure that you're doing what you need to do to keep that money.
Right, yeah, and I know Jody and I usually at the end of the year when I'm trying to do the financials, like I'll go to her and say, okay, here's your title, here's how much we
Yes.
had, here's how much we spent, we got 10% left. And we'll look, okay, how much do we, how
Yes.
much can we have as a carryover? And I
Yes.
think the title one is 10.
Yes.
And the other ones are like 40. So.
Percent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so me and her do kind of sit down and look at that at the end when I'm trying to do financials, and we might be like, oh, well, if we have 5% carryover in Title I, but, more in Title II, then we can say, okay, well, if we have some professional development that we charge to Title I, that could be moved to Title IV to kind of make sure we're still within the parameters of how much carryover and stuff we can get, because I think that is a monitoring thing that they
It
look
is.
at.
It is.
Right. And there's also monitoring on what programs you can switch monies around to also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I mean, some
absolutely.
of them are specifically
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
for that, okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because I think, especially Title I, whenever you put money like, okay, here's how much parent involvement money you have in the budget when we do that, like, you can't touch it, that's how
No.
much you have to spend on it.
Okay.
But other stuff, like if you say, okay, well, I had this much of instruction, but now I wanna do a little bit more PD, you can kind of move it within those two, but I know like professional development, once it's in there, it's in there. So I know Jody goes over all that stuff too with her principals every year and kind of goes over their budget and was like, okay, what's your strategic plan? How can we help you with that, with the title money that you're getting? Well, she did that, I know this year for following year, and kind of sits with the principals and kind of helps them relay that money back to their strategic plan
Okay.
to help meet the goals that they are
Yes.
looking for.
I mean, just in the carryover, those earmarked step 7, the fiscal year 22 was just over 400,000. Fiscal year 23 was just over 591,000, and fiscal year '24 was just over 680,000, you know, that we're carrying forward. Uh, So, if there's step 7 expenditures, to me, it looks like we have a very healthy balance in that area.
So, you're right, and I asked questions last year when we were looking at some of the things that we knew that we needed to do moving forward.
Yeah.
Because we weren't going to have, excess funds, you know. I said, is this, Sarah, did we not spend any money here on this? No. Did we not use our funds that the state sent us for this? No. But then when you go back to the strategic plan, or you go back to the other budget pieces that are in the other applications that we submit, it's right there. It says that, you know, we received this money and this is what it was going to be used for. But it was not used for that. So this year we've been very, and when we were doing the entire strategic plan last year, we were very intentional. And we've been spending those funds as we've said, this is what we're going to be spending them on.
Yes.
Because step 7 is part of a block grant. And if we don't use it, we're gonna lose it.
Well,
And
Yeah,
when
that's my concern.
and when all of the you know, with the new administration that's coming in, and they're saying that they're going to be looking, you know, at various entities and really find out about, you know, they're gonna look at everything. And one of the things they're like, how are people spending the money that we're giving them in these block grants or in this other fund? Well, if it's not demonstrating that we are spending that money as it was intended, well, then we're gonna take that back from you. And don't they have the right to do that? Yeah, they do. So we need to make sure that in our fiscal responsibility and what we're asked to do for the state and any of these things, that we are actually doing what we said we were going to do and we're spending it that way.
Yes.
Well, that begs the question then, if all of those that we brought up or that were found through the investigation, because we brought up 4 of them
Right.
specifically, if they weren't correctly utilized, right? Can those entities come back and say, now you owe us that money?
Well, they did.
With the COVID, but I'm
cases.
talking about all this the other investigation. So, I mean, we could owe millions for all we know. We don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't.
So I just wonder,
Yeah.
where would that come from in this budget? Like, I know, because we know about the 900,000 that came from the COVID money
Right.
that we reported, but
Yeah.
what about all this other? I mean, where would that come from if we did have to do that? Now, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we have all this money in, you know, savings or for emergencies, but where would it come from? Does
Yeah.
anybody know that question or that answer? Or?
We don't
Is
have
that
that answer at this time.
Okay.
It is a concern. It's a major concern.
The way I see this step 7 money, it's just money
Right.
that was there. We had other sources or whatever, didn't need it in fiscal year 22, 23, 24 to the tune of
Yeah, I was gonna
3
say,
million
yeah.
or thereabouts.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I know, well, they have that big textbook adoption math, I think, for this year, so, you know, that is all gonna come out of that
Yeah.
carryover. So that was a big, I forget how much that was this year, off the top of my head, but
It
that
was
was
a
a
big
big
amount.
hunk, yeah.
That was just elementary?
No, that's
Was
K to
every-
12.
K-12.
K-12. It's
Okay.
K-12. Yes,
Okay.
it's K-12.
I mean,
Forgot about that.
A
Yeah,
lot
so
of
that'll
these-
dwindle a bunch of that
yeah,
step 7
a
money.
lot of these JV entries were Fund 61.
Yeah,
You know, there's some 63s and 71 there.
Yeah.
But on carryover restricted turf funds, TURF, when I think of turf funds, I think of fields.
yes,
Am I correct in that assumption?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
To the tune of just under $500,000.
yeah, I think.
Was that the high school?
Yeah, so
Yes.
we try to set money aside a little bit every year if we have any, like guess leftover. Usually it comes out of, like any miscellaneous income that we
Yes.
get throughout the year. We try to put some of that back to kind of hold that in case we do have to replace the turf again, then at least we have some money set up. And I think George had kind of started that when he was here, and we've just kind of been continuing that year, that every year's putting as much as we can in that.
Now, that number is not or is net 10.3. If it's restricted, it shouldn't be in there, in my thought process.
Right.
If it's restricted, it should not be in
In the unrestricted.
the unrestricted, unreserved, unrestricted balance.
Shouldn't be, but maybe it is. I can double check on that just to make sure.
Because if we do have restricted funds in an unreserved, unrestricted number,
Right. Then that needs to be.
then
Make
shouldn't be
that-
in my number,
yeah,
my
right,
thought
Right,
process.
Yeah.
Right.
it needs to be transferred out.
And he's
Right.
rated.
And on the, as it relates to the levy, the financial statement, of course, general fund revenues down, expenditures are up, for, compared to last year. Did we carry the levy funds in Fund 11?
Yes.
Okay. Just as a separate category, subcategory, or
Yeah, it had its own projects.
own projects? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I figured, since, it's down about 1.4 or something like that.
Yeah.
In round numbers in my thought process. And the expenditures are up compared to last year. Was, if I can find my numbers here, prior expenditures. The year-to-date expenditures, prior year was about 5.8, this year 6.5.
And some of that could be an increase in salaries too, because everybody.
That's what I
got-
was wondering.
Oh,
Because
no.
everybody got a
everybody got a
2.5,
pay raise
almost a
and
2.5%
then,
pay raise.
Yeah. And then your, PEIA went up.
Because, it's about 4.7 to 5.3 is the difference in the general expense,
Yeah.
general current.
Right. Yeah, cause that's a majority,
That's where,
majority where all of our
It's
payroll and
salary
stuff comes out of.
related.
Yeah.
yeah, Yep. yeah.
But, do we have a plan or needs, or whatever that 10.350, if that 500 needs to come out of it, we've already taken over 2 million out of it, maybe more that I didn't pay attention to in there. So let's assume that's 8 million right now. Do we know how old all of our roofs are, HVACs? I mean,
Tim does, yes.
yeah, I would like another meeting like this, just on facility needs. And another meeting like this, just on personnel. Outside the normal meeting.
Right.
That you can
Yes.
spend some time on, and, and if there's other areas that other board members would like,
Yeah.
but,
These meetings, this meeting, I haven't been to many, or any, like this one. It's very informative,
Yes,
and boards need this.
Absolutely.
We need to know, and we need these meetings where we can sit down
I mean,
with everyone involved here and ask the questions we need to ask.
yeah,
And so that we are more knowledgeable
yes,
when we go
Well,
to a
because,
regular
well,
meeting
we're gonna be
and
after the takeover, we need to know what we're doing.
Exactly.
That's most
And
imperative.
that's a big thing.
Yes.
We
I
need
mean-
to know what we're doing, and we need to know how we are to appropriately do it by code, by law, and we need to know exactly what's going on. We don't need to be in a room with
dark.
the lights turned on.
Well, this is a step to verify to the state that we're taking the necessary steps to get a solid foundation, so we can start assuming some,
Yes.
piecemeal items or whatever, not total, but at least piecemeal, whether it be personnel, finance, or whatever, food service, or
Which is very
buying milk.
important.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Is everyone doing the training on Saturday?
Are we all doing, I'm doing
I'm
it.
there.
I'll be there.
I'm not, I had other plans, but I'm gonna do the one in February in Charleston.
Okay, I was gonna say, the personnel part of it, we don't need a training, a local training, in my opinion, as much as as I think you will see, the Bulls Rice personnel trainings are the way to go.
I understand that. I'm more looking at specific to the county at each school level or category.
Right.
Not a general overview of personnel procedures or statutes or law, but this is the personnel and Upshur County, this is
Right, as it relates to us.
as it relates to
Relates
us.
to us.
You know, we've got a problem in this area, or AIDS, or,
Right, what are the
Yes,
issues?
I will just tell you that the Bulls Rice to me for overview trainings has been
Oh, yeah.
phenomenal. And remember, I worked with personnel for years with former lives.
Oh, how delicate you are.
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're asking for is to take a look at
The county.
specific to Upshur
Upshur
County.
County,
Yes.
exactly.
So
Status
we
report.
know that, okay,
Yeah.
so our comps that we get from the state,
Right.
based on enrollment,
Yeah.
where are we? How many are we
Oh.
over? How many we under?
How many certified, how many uncertified,
yes.
how many
And
getting
just do a dig
certification.
into that
Just
to
stuff.
see
Yeah.
that, so you have a
Yes.
better understanding of
Yeah,
that.
if
Yes.
you're over, under on professional, is it elementary, or is it
Right.
middle school, or is
I'm
it
with
high school?
Right.
You know,
Yes.
what areas do we need to look at locally?
Right,
Yes.
Right.
right.
Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree with that
Yeah.
wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Yeah, now, as it relates to the finance, if there's a Willie out there that knows a little bit about financial statements, and he comes to the board and wants to request $1,000 for this or that for a project, and you have 10.3,350,000 showing as unreserved, unrestricted at the end of the fiscal year, or 26% of your general fund expenditures, and you tell me no,
I'm watched you why.
I'm gonna ask you why. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be,
Makes
we have to
sense,
be
yeah.
prepared for those things.
Yeah.
And that's-
Well, of that 10.3, we've already moved
We've already
to
moved this much.
2 million or 3 million,
Right.
whatever, here.
Yes,
And we have, a roof that needs replaced on XYZ school, and an HVAC system that needs replaced at here or there.
That's why that facility for
That's
me
why
is so
that- yeah.
important.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And, we're over on transportation aids because of what the state requires and what our distances are or aren't, or maybe we're not over on aids, whatever. We have a plan and a need for this
yes.
$8 million or whatever now. It's not just sitting there drawing interest.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
And anytime you run a business, and you know this,
Yeah,
and this is a business, an educational business, it's, you need to have that cushion
Oh,
there
yeah.
for facilities, for
I always
that.
say you're one disaster away
One.
from
Yeah.
ruination.
That's right.
No, that's
That's right.
true.
It's so, we need that, and if you would come to us as board, and you would do it, and ask, you want this $100,000 for, you better have a really, really good reason why, you need that. And if it needs a new roof, then that's a good reason.
Yeah,
It's if, you know, if the, air conditioning heating units need replaced and you can show us where it does desperately need replaced, then that's a good reason.
Yeah. well, it's just, you know, when you look back at our levy, you know, I was reading the actual levy call, where the local board could have reduced the rates if they chose to. And, you know, the administration, you know, should have been reviewing that. We can reduce the rates because of, you know, we're not expecting roofs or HVACs, we're all okay, up to date. Or we cannot reduce the rates because.
We are not.
But
Yeah.
me as the general public out there, until I got sitting here, I didn't know that was an option for the local board to do that. Maybe that helps future levies, maybe it hurts, maybe it won't have any effect, don't know.
Transparency, it's all
But it's
based on, that's
transparency,
all it's based
there
on.
you go. And you can write a levy call where you have an automatic rollback. Where you generate the same amount of money or the same amount of increase every year. It's not optional. You can have a 1% growth or 2% growth factor, or it stays flat.
Yep.
Again, it's transparency to the
Transparency,
public.
yeah, not just saying we're doing this, but this is
Yeah,
Showing.
the showing why, or
Yes.
or where.
because, you know, someone would request our levy revenues and we generated quite a significant amount more. Well, what did you do with it?
Well, quite frankly, that was my question.
Yeah,
Where is the money? What are we doing with it?
Exactly.
and it's
Exactly.
people's money and they have the right to know that.
Yep.
Until, and the situation is, until they know that, we're gonna have trouble with any future
Yes.
levy calls.
Yes.
I'm off my box now.
It's okay. It's all
All right,
right.
that was all very good, very
No.
good.
But you're right, these kinds of meetings are very worthwhile because it does increase knowledge for you.
Yes,
As a
absolutely.
board member.
Yeah,
And then the knowledge that you bring to the table can also help increase the knowledge of the others that are sitting around the table.
Exactly.
Because everybody brings a set of knowledge with them, and it's being open and learning from each other. And that's what this
Yes.
is all about, because
Yes.
that's how you have a well-functioning organization. That's how you have it. It really is.
but I may have some additional questions as I
Yeah. that's-
read through here, but I'll go through the superintendent with everything. I try to do that.
Yep.
So I'm not, you know, short-circuiting the process.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll get a copy like I gave Willie there too for the board members too, so that way you'll have kind of like our whole packet. Then,
Oh, that'd be
then
wonderful.
if you guys wanna look over it, then if you have any questions too,
Yes.
mine,
Yes, please.
So should we just come back in and get it, or? you
or I
know,
can email it to you, or however.
However you want it, you tell us.
I'd like it printed, just because, like, you can do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what,
If everybody wants it printed, I can.
I'm old school, I'm sorry, but
No, that's fine.
I like to write all over
I
it.
do. If you and
Highlight.
George could get off of the dark blue highlights.
Well, yours, cause I was hurried up and trying to get it printed.
Boy,
like,
isn't that the truth?
well, as you can see,
I know, it's hard.
the spreadsheets are
It's-
very
I know.
colorful.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't mind the color.
But there's
Yeah,
a lot
so
more lighter
anything-
colors of blue.
Yeah. So anything that's like yellow is stuff that I have to enter. If it's
Right.
blue, it's like a formula that flows from somewhere else.
But
Yeah.
can it be
This
a lighter
color-
blue?
Find another blue.
I know.
Aqua.
But usually when I print them, like I take the blue, like all the color off to print
Yes.
them so they're
Uh-huh.
pretty. But I was
Oh,
hurried
that's
up and
fine.
trying to get yours
Right.
done.
That's not a prize, just,
That's like that,
Yeah, I know,
that's
it's like, where
the
is
one
it?
report I
Hard
gave
to
them the
read.
other night. It's like I tried to blow it up and I couldn't get it to blow up,
I
so you can
know.
still see the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I will take off the color one.
Are we finished?
Anybody have any
I
other
think unless you have
Any other
questions
questions?
or.
Is this,
We do hope that it's been helpful.
Yeah.
We'll have to come out of,
Yeah, we have to come out of this.
I've
and then
got
we can
the-
turn that off.
you know, I may have more questions on these JVs, but I think I've asked the majority of them or understand. what we're doing.
Because basically that's like the carryover entry, so we're
Yeah.
taking all the stuff that was left in fiscal year 24
Some
and
year,
carrying it all
yeah.
over into fiscal year 25.
Transferring from one line to
Yeah.
another, but
Yeah, so
most
it's
of them
carried
are,
over like your budgets pretty much.
most of them are carryovers from, not from one line item to another. There are some of that in here, but most are carryovers or fund allocations, as I call it.
Well, before we close out of here, I just want to say one thing, and it's about you, Sarah. As a former educator and having you as a student, how wonderful you are in class. And I am just so proud of you. I could still see your little 8th grade in that third row, second seat. I could still see it. And this county is fortunate, and this Board of Education is fortunate to have you as our finance person. I am so proud of you.
Amen to that.
So proud of
agree.
you.
Yes.
I mean, because you know, you see your kids. I mean, I would see
Yes.
my kids in the newspaper under
Yes.
federal investigation.
Yes.
Or alternative school, who was
Yes,
arrested. And
yes.
it's just, you just can't imagine how wonderful it feels to see a student that you had do such wonderful things. And I'm so proud of you,
And in the leadership position from the superintendent on
from the
down,
heart.
I don't mind hearing I don't know, but I'll find out.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right.
Absolutely.
You know, don't feed me a
Right.
smoke.
No.
Right.
I can respect, I don't know, but I'll find out.
It's
But
like,
when you start to smoke, I don't respect that.
it's like cash basis, that drives me crazy.
It drives, and I keep telling him, we didn't pick that title. So he said, can we just have Uriah maybe go back in and change that?
Get a big sticker and put over cash.
He just wants to, yes, if we could just cover that. Yeah, we just can't take that part out.
It's like MGM betting or something.
I
Yeah.
mean, if that's a state template, I don't understand.
Understand why?
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Because that comes off of like their Zoom.
Thing or whatever,
Yeah.
it's just like,
I mean-
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, is there any more discussion for this meeting?
I appreciate these type meetings, it's very beneficial.
Thank you
Yes.
very much, yes.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Do
Second.
I have a second? The Upshur County Board of Education special meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you all so very much, and he will
Thank you.
turn that off and we'll be off the,
And what time, 11:42.
Well, you still can't break the open meetings law just because you're off now.
No, we
You
can't
can't
sit
bring
here
up another